Morning, guys. Gonna wait a few moments while everyone gets ready for today's webinar. All right, there's still a few of you getting ready. I'll just wait a little bit more time. There we go. Of course, I don't want you guys to miss my introduction because how will you know what this class is about if you don't get it? All right. And just so you guys know, if at any time you do have to leave us, this webinar will be available on demand later after today. So don't stress, or if you have anyone that's missing some of it, let them know that they can watch it later. But again, welcome to the webinar. It is called Hard Refresh, the digital guide to keeping up with competitors. This webinar is brought to you by Aesthetics International Association, or AIA, and Dermoscope Magazine, and it's sponsored by MyAdvice. My name is Dorian Reyes, and I'm the assistant editor for Dermoscope, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. This webinar is presented by Robbie Antozzi. Robbie has been a digital marketing consultant in the aesthetic world for nearly a decade, which is a huge accomplishment, and he prides himself in helping small businesses become more profitable. So if you're looking for that, you've come to the right place. Let me just remind you that our webinar is interactive, so please submit any questions that you have for Robbie or his presentation as they come to you, because after it's over, we will do a small Q&A portion. So if you'd like to find that button right now for the Q&A, you can say hello, you can say where you're joining from, and then just get a little bit more comfortable with that process. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Robbie, and you guys can take it away.
All right, sounds good. So I'm just going to share my screen here, Dorian. Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. Dorian, thank you so much for the introduction. Robbie Antozzi here, as Dorian said, and it's a pleasure to be with everyone today. So just to kind of set the stage here, I'm going to be presenting on the 2-year journey to your website summit. And, you know, for those of you who really don't know much about MyAdvice and what we do, we work with a lot of skincare businesses on digital growth strategies. As Dorian said, I've been consulting with aesthetic practices and really skincare businesses for the past 10 years. And really in my time, I've noticed a very consistent pattern in many of the conversations that I have with a lot of skincare professionals. This might not come to any surprise to you, but you didn't get involved in skincare for the business side of it, right? Like that sounds really crazy, but like, yeah, you did not get in skincare for the business side of it. You got in skincare to really help individuals feel better about themselves. And in my experience in really consulting with a lot of skincare professionals like yourself, you know, it's kind of, it jumps out to me that a lot of practices and businesses in general just aren't simply given the right guidance and the right advice relative to digital growth strategies. So that's really what we're going to be covering today. And generally speaking, I mean, it's important to kind of keep in mind that digital growth is really the blend of many different types of strategies. You know, I consult with businesses oftentimes relative to a process in place as far as Google review acquisition, social media. But at the very bottom of your online foundation, so to speak, is really your website. So that's what we're going to be covering today, really preparing your business to understand the proper sequence to look at things relative to when is the right time to update your website, and really what are the right metrics that you need to be looking at relative to going into that process. So let's hop right into it. So before we kind of jump into some detail here, I wanted to open it up to the group and really ask the why, kind of the elephant in the room question. Why does a skincare professional, to begin with, need a website in the first place? So if you could type some answers into me, I'll let that kind of marinate for a minute or two. And while I'm waiting for some answers, this screen here on the right side of my screen is what we call our pyramid of success. And I'm not going to jump into a lot of detail on this, but it's important to keep in mind that, you know, your online presence, again, is the focus of many different types of things. And at the very bottom of your foundation is really the website. So before someone reaches out to you relative to scheduling up an appointment, what are they doing? They're looking at Google reviews, they're looking at your social media, but they're always eventually going to lead back to the website. So that's really why I'm asking this question. Hey, why the heck do you have a website to begin with? So it looks like we're getting some answers rolling in right now. So Amanda says for visibility. So that's a great answer. Alaya Wilcox says to buy retail and book appointments. And Amanda says as well, looking at your reputation. So all of those things are true. These are things that individuals, again, take into consideration. They do come to your website to buy product. They do look at your reputation prior to scheduling up an appointment. But the main reason at the very bottom of all of this, the main reason why you have a website is to simply help you become more profitable. So that is the reason. Those are all things to consider when you have a website and the reasons why you have a website. But if we're really connecting the dots here, the main reason is to help you become more profitable and to really grow out your business over the course of time. And when you are more profitable, you can be a better leader. You can be more present in the moment. You might be able to spend more time with your family. Maybe you're going to be able to go on more vacations. So all of these things are really synergistically tied together. And if the website is done the right way with good messaging, with good content and everything else, then it helps you become more profitable. So now that we understand the why, let's go into the how. How do I go about preparing my online presence for success, not only today, but for years to come? That's really the bread and butter of what we're going to be covering today. But before we get into that, we really need to understand the correlation between your website and an iPhone as an example. So I love this slide because it doesn't seem like that long ago that your iPhone, if you do have an iPhone, only had one camera on it. That seems like it was literally yesterday. And I just bought the new iPhone a couple of weeks ago for my wife. And sure enough, it now has 3 cameras on it. So technology changes really, really rapidly. And a website, in comparison to a cell phone, has many components on it. It has contact form fills, it has images, it has live chat sometimes. So in the same way that a website has all of these components, an iPhone also has similar components to better the user experience. And by the way, the reason why they have 3 cameras is because one is for close-ups, the other is for selfies, and the other one is for long-range shots as well, if you're trying to get like a full family reunion photo. So the functionalities of these things are kind of synergistically tied together as well. And kind of, this is a little bit of a different slide, but the picture on the left here is a picture of a kitchen from the 1970s. And if we're comparing that to a kitchen from today, as an example, like a completely updated kitchen, we need to understand that a website, outside of the functionalities, people look at the design aesthetics as well. And if you have an older looking website, similar to an older looking kitchen, you don't feel as good when you step into that kitchen as opposed to something that's a little bit newer. So we need to keep in mind that basically the 2 components that we're speaking about today relative to website construction and really engineering is not only having the right functionalities, but to also really have the right design components. Here's a website on the left that's probably around 10 years old. And if you compare the look and feel of that website to something a lot more modernized, like the picture on the right, you get a different feeling, don't you? The one on the left has a very pamphlet style approach. It's very busy. Your eyes don't really know where to focus first. There's a lot of verbiage on it as well. So you want to stay away from some of those things. What's really in today's environment, as far as website engineering, is more minimalistic undertones. In other words, keep it more simple. You still want to have good content on your website, but the homepage is certainly not the area where you just want to regurgitate everything that you do. And that's kind of the feeling that I get when I'm looking at the website on the left compared to the one on the right. So now that we understand really these components in terms of website engineering, again, the 2 components being design aesthetics as well as functionalities and technology, let's put a plan in place regarding your website's life cycle and really understanding when is the right time to really look at certain things associated with performance. and the things to focus on even after you launch a new website. So MyAdvice, our company here, we're actually based in Park City, Utah. So there's a little bit of a mountain theme here. If you're a skier or a snowboarder, you will jive certainly with this. So we're going to go through steps 1 through 5 right now, and I'll just begin right now with gearing up. So gearing up, this is really the phase that you have 90 days before the relaunch of a new website. So I kind of call this phase taking inventory. You're looking at the map of the mountain, so to speak, before climbing it. These are things that you really need to assess before you go into a website update. Things that are really important relative to the ongoing longevity of your website. So the actions that you should take here during phase 1, again, sometime right before the relaunch of a website, is that you do want to determine how your site is performing right now in this given moment. So look at benchmarks. You want to look at benchmarks like traffic. How much traffic is coming into the website right now, because you obviously want to see an increase in terms of traffic after a website is relaunched. Conversions. How many conversions are coming through the website right now? Conversions in our world, that basically means, hey, how many people are picking up the phone to call you? How many people are submitting their contact form fills? Or in your case as well, how many individuals are buying product on your website? Because we want to see all of those things increase through a redevelopment process. So these are really called key performance indicators. So you really want to benchmark how you're performing right now before you go into the process. And that kind of ties into number 2 here, which is review your site's SEO performance. More or less, if someone is doing a search right now for facials near me, or facials in your town, or eyebrow treatment near me, you obviously want to make sure that you have the right components showing up so that your website is showing up higher within Google search. So if you're on the second page of Google right now for those types of search terms, or even, to be honest with you, on the bottom of page 1, not within the first 3 search results, then ultimately these are benchmark items that need to be kept in mind, because you do want to improve upon those things as you go through not only just the relaunch of a website, but the continued health of your website presence. Number 3 here, compare your site with your competitors. So this is really important. You don't want to play follow the leader. In other words, everyone here knows who their competitors are locally. And it's not like you want to replicate what they're doing, but you do want to have a good understanding for what they're doing well and really put your own personal twist on that as well. So again, if their website looks better, if they have a before and after gallery on their website that's really dynamic, if it's constantly being added to, these are things that you really want to, take into consideration when you're actually going to the process of building out a new website, because, hey, these are your competitors and you need to level up against them. Otherwise, again, you risk losing even word of mouth clients coming to you. And finally, number 4 here, you want to research algorithm updates. And what that basically means is that Google makes a ton of algorithm updates every single year. I'm not sure if you know this or not, but Google makes around 600 algorithm updates every single year. So you really want to make sure that you are keeping in mind those things. And a recent example of this actually is ADA compliancy. Not sure if you know this or not, but websites in today's environment, every single one needs to be ADA compliant. So it's no different than basically having a ramp up into your business for individuals with wheelchairs. That same thought process gets put towards having a website that's also compatible for individuals with seeing deficiencies, as well as hearing deficiencies as well. So there's a plugin that we actually have that we incorporate on every single website that we build that basically makes every single website ADA compliant. And I can show you a little bit more about what that means if you have any questions on it. So the pitfalls to avoid in phase 1 here is setting unrealistic goals. So we need to keep in mind that even after you launch a new website, say your website is getting 100 visitors right now, it's not like your website is going to jump from 100 visitors up to 1,000 in a month. That doesn't really happen. These organic changes take time to really grow and mature. So we want to keep that in mind in terms of expectations. You always want to see a gradual grow, very similar to an investment portfolio. Another pitfall to avoid would be to monitor the wrong things. The bread and butter of online success and the metrics that you should be really keeping in mind in terms of website success is really, you want to monitor these top 2 things. You want to see an increase in traffic, because inevitably an increase in traffic is always going to lead to an increase in terms of contact form fills or phone calls into your practice. So keep those things really simple, and you want to monitor those things because they're the right things to monitor. So phase two here, phase two is what we call acclimation. So when is phase two? Phase two is 0 to 2 months after the relaunch of a website. So after we've taken inventory, after we've kind of benchmarked where we're at right now, we want to start to really understand and establish a base camp for, hey, website performance moving forward. So again, this is typically 0 to 2 months after the relaunch of a website. And your website is kind of at this point acclimating to the new environment. So very similar again to climbing a mountain, you're getting up a little bit and you're acclimating to your new environment. So the actions that you should take here is make your biggest change first, which is really what you just did, keeping in mind this is 0 to 2 months after the relaunch of a website. So you just made your biggest change, which is your website, and that's fantastic. At this point, your website is fully updated. You know, it's doing good things. It's looking well. You're proud of it. You can really show it off. It's almost like you're buying a new purse or something, right? It makes you feel good. Number two, another action that you should take during phase two is test, test, and test again. We're really big on testing here. So in other words, make sure that your contact form submissions are working. So if someone is going to your website, is that being routed over to you if they're submitting their contact information to you? Something as simple like that is a big deal. You want to make sure that there's no broken links on your website, because broken links can actually hurt your SEO as well. SEO meaning search engine optimization. So this is kind of the phase where you figure out some of those things like, hey, quality assurance, is the website working? It's not broken, it's live here. So we want to make sure everything is kind of optimized in that way. Number three action that you should take during phase two here is that you really want to monitor things very carefully. So you really want to make sure that, again, all of these things are working synergistically for you. You want to make sure that you have your Google Analytics linked up to your website as well, so that you can track all of these metrics. So you really want to monitor performance and get those things moving. And number four is that you don't want to panic. So once a website is relaunched, sometimes what can happen is Google's kind of getting acclimated to your website as well, and really understanding, hey, there's been some changes to this website. It doesn't look like the website from before, from a couple of years ago. So what are these changes and how do they really impact Google search? So there's always going to be some ebb and flows in terms of traffic. You might see a little bit of a dip. You might see a little bit of a raise once the website is actually launched. But the key is that you don't want to panic. You really want to let your results marinate over the course of time here in terms of search visibility as well as traffic. The pitfalls to avoid here in phase two is doing too much too soon. I want everyone to really understand this point in a lot of detail. The graphic that you're seeing there on the page, basically, this is a graphic of an individual who actually was seeing really steady traffic for their website. You know, it was performing very well, and that's why you see a lot of these metrics here. Hey, it's kind of steadily going up. But unfortunately, when they really wanted to update their website, they went into the process with a, hey, everything needs to be fixed at once mentality, meaning they didn't like the content on their website. They hated the content. So they said, hey, I really want to change all of this up all at once. And in fact, that is the complete wrong way to go about redeveloping your website. And the reason for that is because you're making too many changes at once. So if you don't like the content on your facials page, as an example, or micro needling or anything that you really do, going through the development process of a new website is not the time to change that content. You really want to make those incremental changes over the course of time after a new website is actually launched. And just a cautionary tale here, what happened is that after this person launched a new website, going into that process saying, hey, I'm changing up all of my pages at once, guess what happened? They saw a very dramatic drop within search rankings because it was too many changes at once. Think about the feeling that you get when you're eating too much food, and you kind of, at least I do this. You feel very bloated afterwards, and you don't really feel good because you took on too much at once. That's kind of how the process is for a website as well, is that after you go through a website revamp, you don't want to tackle too many of these changes at once. You really want to make sure that these changes happen incrementally over the course of time. Another pitfall to avoid here is not testing your website on different browsers and devices. So in other words, hey, make sure that your website looks really good on a tablet. Make sure that it's optimized for that device. Make sure that your website looks good on a smartphone, that it has one-click call features, so on and so forth. So these are things to keep in mind. So we're kind of building here. We're at phase three. Phase three is what we call gaining momentum. So now that your site is acclimated, it's really time to start making some more incremental changes to really boost out the traffic as well as conversions coming into your website. So when is phase three? Phase three is usually 2 to 12 months after the relaunch of a website. So we're kind of in that building phase here. In phase three, the actions that you should take here is audit your content. You're probably wondering why there is a hamburger right aside of this content piece here. So I always say to our clients, the beef of your website, where's the beef, right? The old Wendy's commercial. The beef of your website is really the content that explains everything that you do in a lot of detail. We need to think about really what Google is in place for. We use Google to help us make everyday decisions. If we're looking for something locally, say I'm in the mood for Italian, I might be typing into Google best Italian restaurant near me. And I might be prone to click into a lot of the places that pop up first. So the point being here is that, when your website has a lot more content on it that explains everything that you do, your website gets more credibility within Google search because Google identifies your website as, hey, here's a lot of content that explains questions and answers in terms of facials, eyebrow waxing, you name it. And it's trying to help out someone make a decision. So Google really values a lot of that. So if your website doesn't have a lot of content, Q&As on everything that you do, then it's not really serving you. And we really need to, again, think about, hey, why is Google in place to begin with? Google is in place to help us find answers. And a part of that is really content driven. So think about a lot of Q&As for what you do and plug that into the website in terms of content. Another thing that you should do during this phase is audit your backlinks. I'm not sure if you know what backlinks are, but they're basically links that lead back to your website. You want to make sure that these are really credible. An example of this is, hey, if a local newspaper or a publication did a write-up about your business, hey, you opened up in 2015, a couple of years ago, obviously, more than a couple of years ago at this point, but say a local newspaper wrote that up, there should definitely still be a link from that article leading back to your website because it boosts up credibility. So those are called link building strategies. And the idea here is that it actually helps out the organic visibility of your website. If you have any questions on that specifically, I can go into a little bit more detail with you after this call. Another thing that you want to do here during this phase is optimize your conversion elements. So a big thing that I see sometimes with skincare professionals that they miss on their website is really the conversion elements of what individuals take into consideration before they pick up the phone and call you. Individuals are looking at, unique imagery on your website. They're looking at before and afters, or at least they're wanting to look at before and afters. So we need to keep in mind that these are all conversion elements that allow you to basically educate someone on your website. And as they become educated, they're like, hey, this person knows what they're doing. Let's pick up the phone and call them. So the pitfalls to avoid here is that, you really want to stay vigilant within your tracking. So this is not really a time to, get complacent as far as your tracking goes. You really want to make sure that all of those things are really fine-tuned, that you're tracking everything associated with your top performing pages, how many hits that your website is getting, traffic patterns, conversions, and everything else. And another pitfall to avoid here is really being too comfortable with your website. Again, keeping in mind, this could be anywhere from 2 to 12 months after the relaunch of a website. I usually ask our clients, hey, ask your clients how they feel about your website, especially an honest client, right? That person that is willing to share their thoughts and feelings. Ask that person, hey, how do you really feel about my website? Do you feel like it does a good job? And really kind of canvas a couple of those people to really understand the usability of your website and really how it's working for that very honest client of yours. So phase 4 here, we're getting close. Well, actually, this is kind of the top. We are at the top here. So this is basically the view from the top. We call it maintenance mode. But again, it's not a time to get complacent. At this point, this is 13 months after the relaunch of a website and beyond. And the goal here is very simple, is to get the most out of your investment by making regular optimizations as needed. You're kind of getting the idea here, right? So the website that you have right now, it's never a set it and forget it thing. Websites are always evolving. They're always changing. And that's really what phase 4 tackles here, as well as that understanding. So you're getting the point. Actions that you should take: monitor, monitor, monitor. Monitor your key performance indicators, again, meaning traffic coming into the website as well as conversions. These are things that you really want to make sure that you have under control. Keep up with search algorithm updates. As I said a couple of minutes ago, Google makes around 600 algorithm updates every single year. Are you working with a guided guided company who knows what they're invested into as far as just understanding how Google works and those changes? That's really important. Number 3 here is watch for major updates in terms of design best practices. So I've come to find out recently that skinny jeans are all of a sudden out. People aren't wearing skinny jeans anymore. So in the same way that, aesthetics change in terms of what you wear, a website is really no different than that. So we need to keep in mind that, hey, if your website is generally speaking more than 2 or 3 years old, it's probably outdated at this point. So in phase 4 here, pitfalls to avoid, not watching that for signs that the decline is coming. So kind of similar to, hey, I'm going down the mountain at this point and, oh my gosh, there's a bear coming out of the woods and that you didn't see coming. We really want to make sure that basically your website is always primed for success. So in other words, you really want to, kind of pay attention to these things that we're talking about in terms of key performance indicators, traffic, as well as conversions. Another pitfall to avoid here is really putting off the website update. So I'll be speaking with clients sometimes and they're like, yeah, I know that my website needs to be updated, but I just don't feel like getting to it. I know that it requires a lot of work. Find a company who really has their efficiencies dialed in that is able to help you out with that, because otherwise, if it's a process that you really put off, it's ultimately not serving you. And ultimately your competitors are gaining an advantage because of those things. So finally, phase 5 here, which is the descent. So what goes up must come down, right? Well, not necessarily. So the idea here with phase 5 is this is around 2 years after the relaunch of a website. And the goal here is very simple. We want to stay away from phase 5. We want to avoid this phase completely by knowing when to go back to phase 1 to benchmark your successes, so on and so forth. So the actions that you should take here during phase 5. You want to learn. This is really a time of reflection and understanding, hey, how did my plan work out over the past 2 years? You want to learn from your mistakes as well as successes. So in other words, hey, if my facials page performed really well, what about that page is different than maybe some of my other pages on my website that I could replicate and also have success for some of the other things that you do? So we want to learn from those things. Actions that you should take here during phase 5 as well is that you don't want to delay. Again, keeping in mind a website is very similar to a cell phone. There's a reason why you get a new cell phone once every 2 years generally, and it's because technology changes at a very rapid pace. A website is really no different than that. And number 3, remember a website presence is an investment. This is a branch on behalf of your business. This is what your clients see before they schedule up an appointment with you. So you really want to make sure that you have these things dialed in. And, it's certainly very critical to understand that, hey, there is a cost associated with being successful across the web. Pitfall to avoid here very simply is indecision. You don't want to get caught in quicksand, so to speak, and get paralysis by analysis saying, hey, is it time to update my website? Generally speaking, your website should be updated once every two years. So now we've kind of covered going to the top of obviously what was covered there in terms of the mountain. It looks like we have a question, so I'm not sure if we want to entertain that right now. What I planned on doing was going through a little bit of a website evaluation. I'll actually cover Amanda's question at the end here. So we actually had 2 brave volunteers submit their websites over to me to basically kind of go through and give some constructive feedback on. So the idea of this very simply is to not rip into these websites. That's not my goal here. My goal is to kind of give the good, the bad, and the ugly, so to speak. So a little bit more of a state of the union. All that I generally do and have been professionally for the past 10 years is look at websites. So I hope that you take whatever I say here with a grain of salt, and obviously understanding that these are all really based around improvements. So we're going to hop into the first one here, which is marconicastle.com. And that is this website right here. And like I said, I appreciate you volunteering your website here. So a couple things that we need to keep in mind, and again, revisiting some of the component strategies that I spoke about earlier in the conversation today is, you really want to make sure that you have authenticity on your website, especially in today's environment. Authenticity is really what sells. And when I say authenticity, we need to really take a critical look at the photos on your website. One of the biggest mistakes that sometimes individuals face is really integrating too many stock photos on their website. And this website actually does a good job of avoiding that. It looks like this business here treats different individuals. Some of these are actresses. Here's a rapper. And this has authenticity. So to me, when I land on this website, it makes it more credible because I'm seeing more authentic images. They're not stock photos. That's really the key understanding here. One thing I will say about this website is that as I scroll down in terms of the browser, I want you to pay attention to what happens. This website is not what we call fully mobile responsive, because as I start to scroll down here, do you see what happens? The images starts to cut off, as well as the text. So that tells me that basically when I try to bring this website on different browsers or a tablet or a smartphone, it's not going to be optimized for every single device that's out there. And truthfully, you're going to find more than 50% of your visitors coming to your website are coming to your website from a smartphone. So you really need to build for the mobile visitor first. And if your website is not adaptive to those different types of devices, then it's not really working well for you. So again, the good things here is that this has authenticity, which I like to see. The bad thing is that it's not built on the right type of technology. One more thing here about the content. So when I click into treatments here, I want everyone to pay attention to what happens here. So it looks like, again, this business offers different types of services. And this is basically a laundry listing of different services that they offer. So if I was interested in a facial, as an example, I wanted to learn a little bit more about, hey, what types of facials are there? What is the difference between these facials, so on and so forth. The problem here is that there's really only one or two sentences here that tells me a little bit about customized LED facial. And if you're the business owner here, I'm sure that there's a lot more that you can say about a customized LED facial, the benefits, questions that you might get asked from your clients about this type of facial as well. So integrating questions and answers, all of those things really matter because we're evaluating different options. And again, if we have the beef within your website in terms of content, that's really going to do a better job at converting that client. So we want to keep those things in mind as well. I'd like to see the social media integrations. That's fantastic. One thing that we've actually done recently for our clients is we'll actually integrate what is called a Instagram live feed. So this is pretty cool because basically when you have an Instagram live feed on the homepage of your website, this is an area here that is always being added to. It's an organic, living, breathing thing of the website's homepage, because anytime that this business adds something to the homepage, or I'm sorry, adds something to their Instagram, it automatically feeds into the homepage of the website here. So think of this as a constantly updated area of the website, which is fantastic. So point being here is very simple, is that yes, it's good to have social media integrations. That's kind of the good. But if you're looking to elevate that even further, think about an Instagram live feed, simply because it adds more authenticity. It makes the website look a little bit more modern, and it drives people into your social media pages a little bit easier. So as you can see, this website here, yes, it still has the icons, but still I'm kind of getting hit with their social media again as I scroll down the interface of the website's homepage. So some really cool stuff there. Possibly integrate a before and after gallery. So, with facials and other things that you do, if you find a client that is saying, hey, I'd be willing to get in front of the camera, my skin looks so much better, I'm happy, I feel better about myself. Hey, get that person to share some of their feedback, right? and get that stuff on the website as well in terms of before and afters. So that's a lot of what I wanted to cover with this particular website here. Jumping over here to this other website. So another one of our attendees offered up their website to give some constructive feedback on as well. Very similar to Marconi. I love to see the authenticity here in terms of who you are, kind of getting to know your background a little bit, your office space. This is where I would go if I was getting a facial done or anything else that you do. That's really fantastic stuff. Now, there is one really critical piece of information here that is missing on this website's homepage, at least at the top of the fold here. And it is arguably the most important piece of information on your website. And that's the phone number. So, say someone is getting referred over to you and they land on your website here. You don't want to give them a runaround user experience. If someone's getting referred to you, they've heard great things about you. Maybe they looked up your social media. Maybe they looked at your Google reviews. They're ready to go. You don't want to provide them with a bad user experience once they land on the website, because things get in the way. Life is busy. They just want to find the phone number and be able to give you a call, schedule up an appointment, and go from there. So when we're constructing websites, we always have every single one of our clients above the fold here, always have the phone number in the top header, which means that no matter where they're at on the website's homepage, that phone number is always following them. So little things like this make a big difference. As I scroll down here a little bit more, again, I love the authenticity, kind of getting to know a little bit more about yourself. This is really cool as well in terms of having some testimonials on your website. All of that's fantastic. Hey, you actually have the Instagram live feed, which is great. Always good to see, again, a little bit more of that authenticity being built throughout the website's homepage. This website here is fully mobile responsive, I believe. Yes, it is. So what that means is that it adapts to any device that's really out there on today's market, which is great. Clicking into the services here, this is really an area that I would recommend beefing up. Again, not to overuse the word, but it looks like, again, you have different facial treatments, the doll face, the oxygen facial, so on and so forth. Truthfully, again, there's probably a lot more things that you could say about all of these facials. So again, thinking about questions and answers. Hey, what is the doll face and what makes it different than maybe the oxygen facial? These are questions that are probably circulating in someone's head before they end up giving you a call. So it's better to have those questions answered on your website. So you should really have individual pages here for every single one of your facials that you offer. And the benefit is that you're really separating what you do, number one, but you're also able to add a lot more content because you're not cramming everything into one page on the website. So that's really what we're focused on here. So it looks like, again, you have a lot of different things here that you do, all of these different types of facials. It would be great to see these basically separated into their own pages, maybe even have some testimonials bled into there as well. So those are my 2 cents about that. I'm going to click into the shop here really quickly. Looks like gift cards are available. If you have product to sell, okay, so this area of the website is under construction. Please check again soon. Always great to have, obviously, a shopping cart integrated on your website as well. And obviously you see the value because this area of the website is under construction. So hope that this correspondence here in terms of, again, our attendees, what I covered for Dollface as well as Marconi here was very helpful. I appreciate you volunteering for that. Just going to jump back here to the presentation. And this is really where I would love to answer any questions that anyone has. It looks like we already had a question come in. So Dorian, I'm not sure if you want to moderate this section.
Yeah, of course. So our first one is about backlinks. And I guess what would be your recommendations if you're looking to try to get your website on to get, backlinks on other websites? Do you have any?
Yeah, great question. So I always recommend our clients to look at the lowest hanging fruit first. So are you a part of any organizations that might have a page about you? And if so, get a link on that page that's pointing back to your website. Again, some real life examples would be maybe a Chamber of Commerce, local website, possibly a website that's done an article on you. maybe a magazine, that has some old information that's still floating out there when you first opened up your business. All of those are link building opportunities, but it's just not really limited at that. When we actually offer link building strategies to our clients, there's other websites that still have that basically that authority within Google search, that as long as there's a relationship there, then you can basically, again, create those ongoing relationships across the web. So that's actually something that we do for our clients as well. Just again, the low hanging fruit example would be some of those, again, magazine, newspaper, articles, or Chamber of Commerce website. Anywhere where you think that you would be listed is technically a link building opportunity.
Okay, so you just got to get in there and start networking, just kind of like everything else.
Exactly. It's like digital networking, more or less. Yeah.
Okay, so in your reviews, you mentioned, of course, optimizing the website for it to be mobile and for it to, be able to work with everything. Is that something that MyAdvice can help with, or is that something that somebody can do on their own?
Yeah, I mean, answer your question number one. Of course, yeah, that's what we do, and really how we engineer our clients' websites is to be fully adaptable on any type of device that's out there on today's market. And those devices, as you know, are always changing. So your website really needs to function almost like an accordion. You can stretch it out, you can stretch it in, and as it crunches in, you really want to make sure it's adaptive to, again, smartphones. So yeah, that's what we do. We provide those types of websites. And of course, there are platforms that are really out there that allow you to construct a website on your own. We actually have, not to get too far into the weeds here, but kind of a complementary website builder product actually that a lot of our clients use and bundle it with some of the other things that we do that basically provide you with content, different stuff in terms of your services and treatment options, and obviously a fully adaptable website that is scalable on any device that's out there today.
Yeah, wow, that's a big perk. So if anyone, I would definitely check that out if you are looking to revamp something. Obviously, you had mentioned that if somebody is just completely unhappy with their website, they shouldn't, just rush through it as much as possible, because like you said, it's just a recipe for disaster. So I guess, would you say the ideal, if you did just want to do a complete website overhaul, would it be those 2 years that you've mentioned? And if so, I know that, in patience, you have to kind of entertain it sometimes. Is there a way to expedite it? So maybe, it's that 2 years, maybe a business can't afford to, really wait that long. Or would you just completely not recommend that at all?
I mean, the idea here is that, yeah, a website is a piece of technology. Again, using the cell phone as an example, there's a reason why you get a new cell phone once every 2 years. Bottom line is this, is that you need to, number one, be happy with your website. And if you feel like it could be elevated in some fashion, then those are conversations worth having with someone. And especially if your website is, again, 2 to 3 years old or even older than that, styles, website technology, a lot of things have changed within the past even 2 years alone, to the point where even websites that we've built from 2 years ago look completely different than the way that websites are being engineered today and what we're launching today. So number one, you have to be happy with your site. If you're not, then again, worth a conversation to have. And number two, again, if you are kind of still okay with your website, but it's 2 to 3 years old, it's still something to at least consider at this point, simply because of everything that we just went through today.
Okay. And then for another one, you had mentioned when you have your services listed, you should put as much information, obviously, because that's what's going to make people want to book that facial, over another one. Is there, I guess, too much information? Should the spa owner be worried about overwhelming the website visitor with too much text? Like what is too much?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there can be a problem with that if you're doing it and purposefully putting all of that information on the homepage of the website.
Right.
Because that makes it really busy. It's too much text. You kind of get paralysis by analysis, and you're like, oh gosh, I'm just going to hop off of here. But a website is a balance. It's a balance of many different types of things. And if you have that content formed on its own individual page, not regurgitated on the website's homepage, then that's really the balance that you're looking to strike. And when you have that balance, it basically, again, it's accomplishing two things. Your website is obviously, put together in a way that's really easy to digest. That's number one, but you're also, again, optimizing your website better for Google search because of that content. Again, keeping in mind that that content just simply needs to be on an interior page of your website, not regurgitated on the website's homepage.
Right. So as long, I mean, it would make sense that if you have a service page for each, you can fill it up with that content, because it does make sense. If you have everything listed, it could be very overwhelming as to someone looking to book, especially if they're new to a spa, or even, it's their first experience with kind of professional skincare.
Yeah. Think about it critically. Like, if you're a client, if you put yourself in the shoes of one of your clients, how would I feel if I land here? And I think that you'll find some honest answers come out after that.
I think that's a good way to put it. How do you feel when because there is, you do get that initial reaction when you do visit, either sometimes it's older web pages and you're just like, wow, I don't like being here at all, versus something that's more streamlined and, is pleasant to play around with. So that does make lots of sense.
Very similar to going through the process of buying a car, or, going to like evaluating different college options. Once you kind of step into that car or step on foot in one of the campuses, you kind of know, right? You feel like, hey, this has a good energy about it. That's what you're going for in terms of your website as well.
Okay, so we just have a few more questions. Okay, let's see. So you did mention, obviously, it is a perk to have your live Instagram feed on it, just to kind of keep everything fresh. And then you did mention that some client testimonials are great. Would you recommend doing maybe some video testimonials overwritten, or is that kind of like overkill?
No, not at all. Videos fantastic. Yeah. Yeah, the point in having, the words on your website, again, is the words in terms of testimonials are really meant for Google search, because that's really what Google reads for the most part. But once someone lands on your website, a video is a conversion tool. If you have your clients talking about, hey, I went to this business, I had the best facial of my life, I feel better, I feel rejuvenated. Those are things that really make a big impact. And let's face it, sometimes when we land on a website, we get a little bit lazy and we'd rather just watch a video as opposed to read, right? So if you have those videos on your website, as long as they're formed in a delicate way and purposefully placed in certain areas of your website's homepage, then they work fantastic. I would just recommend, if you do something like that, it doesn't need to be Hollywood level production. You can have clients literally take a video with their iPhone, send it over to you, text it over to you, have it be no more than a minute long, and just have that client talk about their experience with you. That's all that it would really take. And then you put that video on your website's homepage, and it's like, wow, instant credibility, adding a lot of authenticity to the website as well.
Yeah, very simple to do, but obviously a powerful tool. Since you did mention that, since Google is reading reviews, so you would think that it's, I guess, better to have a mix of both, so that some of those written testimonials are getting pulled by Google as well.
Google reads your entire website, but they really read a lot of the content, that is comprised on your website. That's what helps Google really understand who you are, what you do, and what services that you offer. So the more content, the better, in any type of form, whether it's blog content, services content, testimonials content.
Okay, and then my last question was, obviously, as someone kind of mentioned it before, for you to have a website, obviously it is to become more profitable. But a way to do that would be through, online bookings, or like you mentioned, if you have the capability to do a shopping cart, to do so. Would you say that those two aspects should be considered kind of non-negotiables of a website, or, should it be treated kind of like a pamphlet style, just, information based?
Yeah, so shopping cart is always up to a business's discretion. Some people just don't feel like dealing with the shipping, so to speak, when they would prefer, hey, if my client just comes into my storefront here and buys products, hey, that's good enough for that person. Because we need to keep in mind, all of these things take time. If you end up getting orders for these things and you're handling the fulfillment of those orders, well, that's going to take up time, right? It's a lot easier for someone just to come into your business and buy product. But if you can carve out the time to do those things and to make it more convenient to your clients to buy product, hey, that's a fantastic tool to have within the website.
Okay, so it's good, but it's not, you shouldn't just rely on those two.
It's a discretionary type of item. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. If you have any questions for Robbie, please submit them. As long as we are live on the Zoom, I will be able to generate a report for Robbie and his team. So please don't be shy, send them over. But I just wanted to thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Marconi. I see that you're here for the website review. Thank you so much for volunteering. We always appreciate it. I'm sure it's different because he's usually in the presenter your seat, Robbie. So I'm sure for him it's a little different, but I wanted to thank him for letting us, use him as an example. So I appreciate it.
Sure. Yeah. Heartfeltly appreciate it. So thank you.
Thanks, guys. But if there's no more questions, I think that's going to wrap it up today. But thank you again. And we will see you next month. And obviously, thank you, Robbie, for giving us all of this great information. And I am sure you will have lots of people reaching out with questions.
Sounds good, Dorian. Hey, thanks everyone for attending.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.